everybody, and welcome back to the Buffalo History Museum. My name is Patrick F. Ryan, Education and Programs, and today we've got another episode of History Untold for you. If you didn't see our last episode, basically what we're doing, we're going into our new exhibit, Continuum, a bicentennial of Erie County, and we're taking a look at stories and objects that you may not know about. And for our story this week, we're going to be looking into Freemasonry, Old Fort Niagara, and the story of William Morgan. Now, I'm sure that we have all heard the term Freemasons before, but what exactly were the Freemasons? Well, turn of the century, especially, the 1800s, the Freemasons, they were a somewhat secret social group made up of some of the most prominent elites at this time in the United States. Think presidents, senators, and wealthy businessmen. By the early 19th century, Freemasons, they had been starting to become distrusted by the American public, especially those not in positions of power. Now, behind me, we have an example of some early Freemason items. This one in the center being a Masonic picture. As you can see on it, well, this vase, it has inscriptions and images that both relate to the secret society. And that will bring us to the main subject of our story for this episode, William Morgan. Now, Morgan, he was born in Culpeper, Virginia in 1774, and throughout his early life, he worked as a bricklayer. Now, this is a man that's had quite a bit of conjecture surrounding pretty much every facet of his life. He claimed that he served in the War of 1812 with distinction, reaching the rank of captain. However, if you go back into Virginia state records, there is no record of anyone with his name reaching officer status. At the conclusion of the War of 1812, which Morgan had dubiously served in, he married in 1819 and 2 years later relocated his family to present-day Toronto, the town of York, in 1821, where he opened up a brewery. The Morgan family brewery didn't last long, however. Shortly after it opened, it succumbed to fire. Now, Morgan, he had a problem on his hands, and he relocated his family yet again, first to Rochester and then to Batavia, New York. Once William Morgan moved his family to Batavia, he went back to bricklaying. But it's what he did in Rochester that is of particular interest. While he was there, he attended a Freemason lodge meeting at Lodge 242. Now, the details about this meeting, however, are a little bit fuzzy, and once again may speak to the character of Mr. Morgan. Some say that he was indeed invited to this meeting, while others say that a friend just vouched for him. And this kind of lost him some credibility with the other Masons in Western New York. Even though his original invitation was in question, Morgan, he went around Western New York giving speeches on the Freemasons and even set up his own lodge in Leroy, New York. Even after creating his own lodge in Leroy, Morgan's status in the Freemasonry organization was still in question. Freemasons who didn't believe that Morgan went through the necessary channels to join their secret society began to speak out against the Morgan family. Morgan, in response, he did the unthinkable. Teaming up with local newspaper editor David C. Miller, he decided to write a tell-all book entitled Illustrations of Masonry to expose the secrets of his secret society. With news of a new book coming out that would expose the secrets of Freemasonry, well, here's where things get interesting. David C. Miller, the newspaper editor that had helped Morgan through the early stages of publishing his book, well, his newspaper shop was attacked and almost burned to the ground. Morgan, however, he faced even more backlash from the Freemasons. After the news of his proposed book started to make its way across Western New York, Morgan, he faced a series of dubious charges. The first being that he stole a shirt and tie from a fellow Mason in Batavia on the day of his son's birth. To his contemporaries, many of the charges levied against Morgan, they seemed to be fabricated. After spending some time in jail, a judge, looking at the evidence, acquitted Morgan of stealing a shirt and tie. But that wasn't the end of his legal troubles. Just a short time after being released from prison, he was again accused of a petty crime. This time from a fellow Mason from Batavia that said that Morgan owed him $2.68. This time though, Morgan, his luck had run out. During the night, a group of Freemasons came to the jail, paid his bail, and ushered Morgan into a carriage, sweeping him off into the night. After entering the carriage, Morgan was taken to Old Fort Niagara. The reason? Well, that's still up to dispute even today. We do know one thing, however, about the story. William Morgan, the ex-Mason, well, he was never heard from again. The Masons, well, they claimed that they had given Morgan $500 and had told him to leave the country. But to find out what really happened at Old Fort Niagara, we're going to have to go take a look ourselves. Behind me is the French castle, and now we are on site at Old Fort Niagara, where the supposed William Morgan murder took place. All right, and we are on the main wall of Old Fort Niagara, and once again, I'm here joined by Mr. Emerson, and he's just going to give us a little bit of a background on what the fort's all about.
So Old Fort Niagara was first founded by the French in 1726, and then it became British for about 4 decades. The British held the fort through the American Revolution, and they yielded it to the United States in 1796 as a result of the Jay Treaty. In the War of 1812, the British captured the fort back from the United States, turned it back over at the end of the conflict in 1815, and it's remained in American hands ever since. The U.S. Army did not decommission Fort Niagara as a military base until 1963. So when the fort was first established, soldiers were armed with muskets. When the fort was decommissioned, this was actually involved with Nike missiles, muskets to missiles.
Mr. Emerson, he's going to tell us a little bit more about the facility that we're in right now and what it has to do with the William Morgan affair.
Well, this is the last place that William Morgan was seen alive. And the building was actually an old building when this incident occurred in 1826. This building was built by the French in 1757 during the French and Indian War, and it was designed to hold gunpowder. So it has really thick stone walls, it has a stone arch ceiling. On top of that ceiling is about a 4-foot deep pile of dirt, and that's to keep incoming projectiles from setting off the gunpowder that's stored in here. If even a spark was allowed to ignite powder here, the building and the fort would probably be blown sky high. So it's a very, very strongly built structure, and we know that in September of 1826, we know William Morgan was kidnapped. He was brought to the Niagara frontier, and while they decided what to do with him, his abductors locked him in this building, and that's the last time he was seen alive. No one knows exactly what happened to William Morgan, whether he was carried across the border and bribed to keep his mouth shut, or whether he was indeed drowned in the Niagara River, murdered by his abductors. It remains a mystery to this very day.
After his kidnapping, Freemasons claimed that they had given Morgan $500 and sent him away to live in Canada, thus forever protecting their secrets. However, that is not where the story ends. Shortly after the disappearance of William Morgan, a body washed up on the shores of Lake Ontario. Now, this body, it was confirmed to be Mr. Morgan by none other than his own wife. However, that's where the story gets a little bit interesting. Even though the body had already been identified by Mrs. Morgan, just a few days later, a Canadian woman stepped forward by the name of Sarah Monroe, claiming that her husband, a local fisherman, had also died and that the body was actually his. The story of William Morgan and his body soon became national news. An American public that already distrusted Freemasonry, well, they now had another reason to distrust this secret society. The dislike of Freemasonry, which was once just a whisper on the mouths of American citizens, soon became a fervent shout. Accusations of murder of a body double, it involved politicians from Thurlow Weed to DeWitt Clinton. In fact, the former governor even offered a $2,000 reward for any information on the murder of William Morgan. While the mystery surrounding William Morgan was never fully solved, it did give birth to the United States' first third political party, the Anti-Masonic Party. In 1832, they run their first candidate, William Wirt, who, although he doesn't win, does have a big effect on the outcome of the election. Taking votes from Henry Clay, this leads to the election of Andrew Jackson. In 1840, the Anti-Masonic Party, they nominated William Henry Harrison, the former war hero, and Daniel Webster, the orator from Massachusetts, for president. When, the more dominant Whig Party decided to go with William Henry Harrison and John Tyler instead, the Anti-Masonic Party, which had been running out of steam into the 1840s, virtually dissolved and became incorporated into the Whigs, along with National Republicans and disaffected Federalists.